Uh, uh, what we're talking here is I am redeeming something from the Beis Hamikdash, or the Beis Hamikdash is deacquisitioning something. They have too many sheep.
That's a word, deacquisition?
What?
The deacquisition, is that a word?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Would I have used it if it wasn't a word?
Yes.
Lo hispik lebidoso, but you did not yet give the money. Now, there are circumstances in which, remember, you have to pay 125% of cash value. In other circumstances, you have to pay 100% of cash value. But you have not yet paid, okay? Ad sha'amad b'masayim. And in the interim, before you take the bull, say, or the sheep, and before you find your wallet and pull out the money, the market conditions change and that animal doubled in value. Okay? So remember we said earlier, it's the kesef that's a kinyan with the Beis Hamikdash, not the Mashiach. So since you haven't yet paid, you haven't bought it. And if the market value went up, you have to pay the higher price, the new market value price. My timer, what's the rationale? V'nasan kesef v'kumlo. He has to pay the money for it to become his. Okay, so if the market goes up, you have to pay, obviously, the new market value. Now, mishacha b'masayim. What if you acquired something from the Beis Hamikdash that had a current market value of 200? V'lo hispik b'doso, but you did not yet pay for it. Ad she'amed b'mona, until the market price crashed, and it's only worth 100 now. No saying Messiah, you still have to pay the 200 that it was worth when you entered the transaction. My timer, what's the rationale? Lo yehi koyach hedyot chaymer me hekdesh. We say that an individual is always at a disadvantage when he's doing business with hekdesh. So if he hasn't paid and the price goes up, he has to pay the higher amount. But if he hasn't paid and the price goes down, he still has to pay the higher amount. Okay, now, what if the situation is altered somewhat? What if he actually made the cash payment and he says, I'll pick it up tomorrow, or I'll pick it up in an hour? Okay? Pada'u, he actually made the payment for Messiah and it was 200, and he paid 200, v'lo hispik l'moishcho, and he had not yet had an opportunity to go get it to do a Mashiach, ad she'amed b'mona, and during the time he's walking to pick it up, the market crashes and it's only worth 100. No son Messiah. They keep the 200 he paid, because even though he didn't pick it up, he acquired it at the moment that he gave him the money. My timer, no son a kesef v'kumlo. We had this a minute ago. The transfer took place at the time he put up the money, so it's his that it lost value. So I can buy a stock and it goes down. Now, Pado b'mona, he actually paid 100. Okay, v'lo hispik l'moshchai, he hasn't yet had an opportunity to pick it up. Ad amed b'masayim, he did pay the 100, and it went up in value to 200. Ma shepada padoi, he bought it, he gave the money, he lucked out, the value went up in the interim. And it literally means he only pays one mana, but what it really means is he does not have to pay another mana because he already paid it, and the transfer of the ownership took place when he paid. Okay, Amai, why not? Why don't we apply the din that the Beis Hamikdash always wins and the individual always loses? Hachanami name. Here too, we might want to say lo yehi koyach hedyot chamor mehektesh, that the person should not have more clout than the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara answers, atu hedyot lav b'mi shaparakai. There's a concept of a mishapara. If you make a deal to do something, let's say you agreed to sell your house, your apartment for 200,000, and Reuven gives you $10 as a binder, and then I come along and say I'll give you 210. Technically, you're allowed to do that, but the Gemara teaches us, the Shulchan Aruch teaches us that you will not benefit from the extra money you got. So you might as well keep your word. So here too, once you already made the transaction, then the deal's over. So there's no question of the Beis Hamikdash rather having more clout than you. The transaction's complete. Okay, new Mishnah. Now, this Mishnah is very problematic. The wording of this Mishnah is very hard to translate. So the two possibilities are that the son has obligations to the father, and the other possibility is there are circumstances where it's the son's mitzvah, but the father has the obligation. We're going to learn in the Gemara that it's that latter translation. So that's how I'm going to translate it. But if it's confusing when you read the words, you're right. Okay, so kol mitzvahs haben al ha'af, all obligations of a child. Now I'm interpreting it like the second day in the Gemara, that must be fulfilled by the father. Anashim chayavin, men have that obligation, fathers. V'nashim peturos, women do not. Okay? V'chol mitzvahs ha'av al haben, all mitzvahs where the son is obligated to the father. Son has to respect the father. Father says, get me a glass of water. The son has to say how big a glass and leap to get it. Son has to stand up when the father walks into a room at least once every day. Some say every time the father walks into the room. Some go so far as to say if the father's standing, the son may not be seated. Anyway, wherever the obligations of the father to the son, echad nashim v'echad anashim v'echad nashim chayavin, unmarried girls or women have the same responsibility to their fathers that men do. There is the possibility that since a woman is subservient to her husband, that's theoretical, that's not real life. If there's a conflict, so the husband says, get me a glass of water, and her father says, get me a glass of water, she can ignore her father and help her husband first. But normally, if that's not a conflict, the obligation to defer or honor your parents is incumbent on both men and women. Kol mitzvahs aseh shahazman grama, all time-related mitzvahs. Saying Kriya Shema because you have to say it by 9:06 on some particular day. Putting on tefillin because they're only in the daytime. All sorts of mitzvahs aseh shahazman grama, anashim chayavim, anashim peturos. Men are obligated, women are not. Kol mitzvahs aseh shelo hazman grama. All mitzvahs that are just stam, you have to do it. Then, and according to the Ramban, that even includes tefillah, because according to the Ramban, all you have to do is say, thank God for helping me and keeping me alive today, anytime during the day. So in that, those are mitzvahs, Shalah Hazman Grama, Echad Anashim V'Echad Nashim, Chayavin, both men and women have equal obligation. Kol mitzvahs lo saseh, all negative mitzvahs, do not do this, do not do that. Ben v'zman grama, ben shelo hazman grama. So, for example, there's a mitzvah, you may not eat chumetz on Pesach. That's a mitzvah shahazman grama. That's time related. After Pesach, you can eat chumetz. Before Pesach, you can eat chumetz. That is echad anashim v'echad anashim. Chayavin, women are equally obligated as men. Okay? And chutz, with a few exceptions. Mebal takif, that means cutting your hair. There's a point, I don't know exactly where it is. Nobody does. That's why we leave this part without cutting it. And some people have long payas because they hold you're not even supposed to really trim them anywhere near the head. But women do not have that obligation. The baltashlis, shaving your beard. I'm going to translate it that way. It really means removing the corners of your beard. Some people go so far as to not trim their beard at all, just let it grow. Other people say you can use certain implements to remove facial hair, but not a razor. But in any event, however you hold, that's a requirement. Women do not have that requirement. Women can use a tweezer and pluck out chin hairs, etc. Obal titame lemesim, and the obligation of, if you're a Kohen, not being metame to a dead person. So if the Cohen family has one child, one male and one female child, Mrs. Cohen and the Kohenes, the daughter of the Kohen, can go to a funeral, but the men cannot. Okay. So now the Gemara is going to grapple with this difficult wording of the Mishnah and try to figure out what it really means. My kol mitzvahs have been al ha'av. What is that phrase? The obligations for a son are on the father. Ilema kol mitzvahs the mechayev bra uma'ave la'abo. If you're going to try and translate it, the obligations a son has to his father, kibbutz aim, etc. Nashim peturos. You're going to tell me women don't have that responsibility? We just said they do. V'hasanya, we have a brisa that says, ish, everyone should, and the pasuk goes on, revere your mother and honor your father, revere your father and honor your mother. Ainly ella ish, I might have a strange havamina that it only means male. Isha Minayan, how do we know women have that same obligation? Kisho oimer ish imo ve'aviv tira'u. We have another pasuk that says a man has to revere his mother and father. There, it's a double plural. So Hare Kanashim, that obligates women in Kibbutz Avim as well. So the first possible interpretation of the Mishnah gets thrown out. Amar Rav Yehuda, Hachi Kamar, here's what the Mishnah is really trying to say. Kol mitzvahs haben. All obligations on a child. Ha'amutalos al ha'avla asos libnoi, where the father has to do it on behalf of or for his son. Okay? Anashim chayavim and nashim paturos, men have the obligation and women not. Tanina laha the Tana Rabbanan. So based on the way Reb Yehuda learns the Mishnah, and that's how we learned it, we have a brisa of chayev bibino l'moilo u'lepidoiso. A father has the obligation to take care of his son's obligation to have a bris, because the kid's 8 days old. It's unlikely he can book the mile. So if he's not from Shevet Levi, including the Kahanim, he has to have Pidyon Haben. Ulalamde Torah, he has to be, the father has to teach his son Torah. Ulahashiyu Isha, the father is responsible for getting the child a wife. Olalamdo imunos, the father is obligated to arrange for the child to learn how to earn a living. So, for example, the father can set up an apprenticeship for the child. The father, if he's a farmer, can take the kid out and show him how to sow and reap, etc., etc. And lahasito b'mayim v'yeshamim af hasito b'mayim. Some say the father is also mechuyev to teach the kid to swim. Okay, because otherwise, if you fall in water, you'll drown. What? Then you're obligated to learn yourself. We're going to learn that in a second. If for some reason your father doesn't do all these things, you still have the self-obligation.
Okay? Are there any obligations to a daughter?
No. Daughters are free. Mommies teach daughters to cook and to sew.
That's all.
That's it. Okay? Now, that's women have to learn. When I said to cook and to sew, so therefore she has to know Hilchas Shabbos, because she has to know, can she sew this? Can she pin this? She has to learn Hilchas Basar v'Cholav, because she has to know how to cook. She has to know kashrus. So they paskin that women are required to know halacha l'maisa, all the things that she's obligated to do.
Well, the mother will teach her this.
Which her mother will teach her, or her father. But she's not either allowed or required, depending on the Shita, to learn like Shakla B'Tarya in the Gemara. Now, I know that here women do have Talmud classes in Boca, both here and at BRS. My son just was a teacher in a school in a community, on a high school. And he was, after 10 years, asked to teach Gemara to girls, and he resigned. Okay, so it's not trivial. I mean, he gave up his parnasa rather than violate, because he called his Rebbe and he asked his Rebbe, can I do it? And his Rebbe said, you could tell them the following. You'll teach maskanos. In other words, you'll go through the Gemara and teach what the halacha is, but you won't teach Gemara. So if you make me teach girls and boys in the same class, you're going to wind up depriving the boys of Gemara. And so they gave him 1 more year, and then he was fired. All right, ad kan. So Reb Yehuda Omer, Kol she'enu melamed es beno emunos, anyone who declines or delays or winds up not teaching his son how to do earn a living, melamdo lelistos, What he's doing is he's teaching his kid to be a crook because he's going to need money. And if he has no legitimate way to earn a living, he'll figure out an illegitimate way to earn a living. Nobody can survive without an income. So, listus al-gedaitach, you really think that the father is going to teach, give the kid lessons in robbing banks? Ella keilu melamdo listos. It as if he is encouraging him to learn to obtain funds illegitimately.
What about monkey see, monkey do?
I can't hear you.
What about monkey see, monkey do? The father's a thief. The kid isn't going to be a thief.
I could.
Even if he doesn't teach him, just watch him.
So I'll tell you a cute story. That every community in Europe, everybody had a hereditary role. The Rav was the Rav because his father and his grandfather and his great-grand. The Schneider was the Schneider. Everybody had a job. So the community ganef knocks on the rabbi's door at 2 a.m. Rabbi goes down, opens the door, there's the ganef holding a sack of money. He says, Rabbi, I found this on the street. I want to do the mitzvah of Shavas Aveda. So the rabbi says, Ach, Baruch Hashem, you did tshuva. It's Elul, you did tshuva. Come, sit down. I'll go get some schnapps. We'll make a l'chaim. So the rabbi goes upstairs to get the schnapps. When he comes down, the ganef is gone. All the silver is missing from the bread front. The rabbi runs out after the ganef. He says, Yitzchak, why did you take everything? He says, Rabbi, a mitzvah is a mitzvah, but a parnasa is a parnasa. So you see that even thievery is episode. Okay. Deceive. Okay. Now, l'moilo menayin. How do we know that a father must arrange for the son to have a bris? Deceive, it says, Yemola Abraham es Yitzchak beno. Abraham was commanded to circumcise Isaac. Okay? Vehecha delo ma'ale abua. So what happens in a case where there is no father, the woman's divorced, or whatever is the circumstance that the father's away? The father can't do it. What is the obligation? The community represented by the Beis Din is obligated to have the kid have a milah. Okay? Dichsiv, himo lachem kol zocher, because the pasuk says you, meaning the whole Jewish people, are responsible to have a bris on all males. The Hevi Delo Mahale Beidina. So what happens if the community ignores its responsibility? If the Beis Din does not step up? Mechayev Ihu Lemimahel Nafshe. The minute the kid is 13 and a day, he has the obligation to do milah on himself. Not physically, he has to hire a moil, but that's what he has to use his bar mitzvah money for. Okay? Diksiv, the oral zocher asher lo yimo as basar or loso, v'nichriso. If you do not have a circumcision on your orla, then you are put in kores. So it's an Easter kores, and the Easter is called every second. So if you're 14 years old and you haven't performed had a milah yet, you have a year of constant averas, etc. I know of a case where in Russia they didn't have opportunities usually. So a friend of mine, Rabbi Bronstein Zatzal, who was a prominent moil, went to Russia to perform milah on. He was actually paid to go to Russia to do milah on an 8-year-old boy. And the boy's father said to him, Rabbi Bronstein, I never had a Mila, do me too. And the boy's grandfather said, Rabbi Bronstein, I never had a Mila. And the boy's great grandfather. So Bronstein did 4 doros of this family. It is believed that the very last time that happened was in Mitzrayim the day before Pesach, where everybody in the family in various daras. But that's just okay. Now, so how do we know that the mother doesn't have to call and hire a moil? The pasuk says, "Ka'asher tziva oso Elokim," because God spoke to Avraham, telling him to do a milah on Yitzchak. Also, velo oso, he spoke to Avraham. He didn't speak to Sarah. Okay, what?
What about Sipporah?
Oh, come on.
Moshe.
She was acting as a shliach. Also, that was not a kosher bris. I mean, there are common reasons. It's a weird story, but it was not a kosher bris. All right. In any event, ashkachan miyah. So, if you look at the pasuk doesn't say you and all the Jews after you do milah on your kid. It says that was a command for that moment in time. Okay, L'Doros Minolan, how do we know that Jews in the future have to do milah on their kids? Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, it says in the yeshiva, they've said over in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, Kol Makom Shenemer Tzav. If the word Tzav is used, Eina Ela Zeruz Miyad U'Ledoros. Tzav means you must perform what I'm about to tell you to do with alacrity now, and you have to pass this Masorah on to the rest for the rest of time to the various generations. Zerus diksiv, how do we know you need to do it with alacrity? Tzav es Yehoshua v'chezikahu tsehu. In the parsha this last week, God said to Moshe, bring Yehoshua in front of everybody and give him strength and what they translated fortification. Okay. Miyad l'daras tiksiv, and the very next words in the pasuk are min hayom asher tziva Hashem from the day I'm telling you to do this for all time. Okay. How do we know a father has to do pidyon of ben unless they're Levitic from the mother or the father's side? Diksiv kol bachar bonecha tifte. All the firstborn sons must be redeemed. What happens if the father did not do a pidyon of ben? He didn't know about it. He wasn't present. Whatever. That the person himself, when he reaches 13, is obligated to have opinion. Diksiv paida tifta. Poda must certainly be done. Okay, the double lashon. So how do we know the mother is exempt from this obligation? Diksiv tifdeh. The pasuk is dotted tifdeh, but you could read it tipodeh, which would be a masculine form of redeem. Okay. Kol hamitzav liptais es atzmo, anyone who has the obligation to be redeemed or to redeem himself if he hadn't been redeemed, mitzvah liptos es acherim. He has the obligation to be poida others, meaning his son. Anyone who is excluded from the obligation of having a pidyon, which means women, girls, they don't have to redeem others. Okay. So how do we know that a woman doesn't have to be poida herself? Tichtav tifte, the pasuk said tifka, but you could read it tipode in the masculine. Kol sha'acherim mitzuvim liftoiso. Whenever anybody else has the obligation to do a pidyon, he has to have it done on him. Mitzvah liftos es atzmai. V'kol she'enu acherim mitzuvim liftoiso. Anyone that does not have a requirement of having a pidyon, okay, performing a pidyon, ein mitzvah liftos es atzmo, doesn't have to be paid to someone else. How do we know that others do not have to redeem the lady, the little girl? Aimer Kra, the pasuk says, called Bachor Bonecha Tifte, all firstborn of the sons shall be redeemed. Bonecha below benoisecha, man, boys and not girls. Okay, Tanarabana. Who liftos? If the first, now here's the case. Man just had a boy. It's 30 days. He has to be paid to his son. Okay? Ubeno, I'm sorry, who yiftas? He finds out he never had a pidyon, but he has this newborn baby, Beno liftas. The baby needs redemption, but he only has 5 silver coins. He can't do 2. He doesn't have the wherewithal. Okay, who kaidem livno? According to the Tanakama here, he goes first, not his kid. So he redeems himself now, and when he can accumulate 5 slayim later, he can repay to his son. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer beno kadmo, no, the baby, because that's bismano, needs a pidyon first, and then shazem mitz vaso al aviv, because that obligation, the basic way to do pidyon is the father. So this guy's father didn't do it, but he's a father. So he has to do the kid first, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Kol Moedim, turn the page, Kol Heicha Deleka Ela Chomesh Slayim. The guy only has in the whole world, his only assets are the 5 Slayim. Who kaidim live? No, then he goes first. My timer, what's the rationale? Mitzvah legufe adifa. When it comes to body mitzvahs, putting on tefillin, doing a pidyon, doing a milah, the person takes precedence over his obligation to help or to do it for someone else. Keep plige, when would they debate? So they would debate in the following case. Heicha de'ika chamesh mishubadim. Somebody owes me 5 slayim. Mel owes me 5 slayim. So v'chamesh b'nei chayrin, and I have 5 slayim in my pocket. Rabbi Yehuda Soiver mal v'diksiv v'tayra kikisuva b'shtar damya. That a debt that's obligated in the Torah. In other words, I have to give the Kohen the 5 slayim. So that, okay, bahani chomesh perek lebrei, I can use the 5 slayim Mel owes me. I can say to Sid, because Mel is a coin too, could say to kid, Sid, do the pidyon on my kid and get the 5 sloyim from Mel. Okay? Miyazel Kohen v'tarifle the chamesh mishubadim lididei, and then he could go and he could collect the 5 from Mel. For Rabbanan Savre, but the rabbis hold the other ways differently. Malavid eksiv bi'arai salav the ketoiv of shtar damya. An obligation that the Torah puts upon you that costs money is not the same thing as an actual IOU that you owe the Torah. Okay, the Hilkach, therefore, mitzvah de gufei adif, you use the 5 sloyim you have to do your own pidyon, and when you collect from Mel, then you can do the pot of the kid. Tana Rabban, okay. Liftos espino ola olos l'regel. This time you have a new choice. You have enough money to pot of the kid, or enough money to buy a korban and travel to Jerusalem on Sukkot. Okay? Pot espino. The Tanakama, the Rebbe says you circumcise, you do the pidyon on the kid. And if you can come up with the money, go to Yerushalayim, and if you can't, you can't. Okay, Reb Yehuda Omer, no, you go to Jerusalem first. That because that's time is gonna run out. Shizu mitzvah overes, because that's a mitzvah that once it's after Sukkot, it's too late. Okay, v'zu mitzvah she'enu overes, but the pidyon is an ongoing obligation that never ends till the person's dead. Once he's 30 days old. Okay. Bishlam Rabbi Yehuda, that works fine according to Rabbi Yehuda's time that he holds for his states his reason. El Rabbanan Maitamaihu, what's the rabbi's rationale? The Kra, the pasuk says, Kol b'chor b'necha tifte, all the male children, firstborn of your house, sons should be redeemed. Vahader, and then the pasuk keeps going. Lo yireh panai rekum. If you go to Jerusalem to the temple, you can't go empty-handed. So we do the pasuk sequentially. Since the first part said the pidyon and the second part said, don't go to temple empty-handed, you do it in sequence. So interestingly here, usually the Gemara would now say, what do the Rabbanan do with that pasuk? But it does not. The Gemara just goes weiter. Tana Rabbanan. Minayin shim hoyu lo chamishim banim mechamesh nashim. What if a fellow fathers 5, impregnates 5 women, and each woman has a firstborn son to her, but not to him, obviously. Shechayev liftos kulan, the man is obligated to do all of them. Talmud Leimer kol bachor b'nechad tifta, all the